are listening to the Starter Girls podcast with Jennifer Loading. Whether you are starting a project, starting a business, starting a movement, or starting a brand, we are here to talk about it. And the Starter Girls show is brought to you by Walt Mills Photographer of Glad Models Agency. If you are in the Dallas or surrounding area and looking for some photography, check out Walt Mills. You can learn more about him and his work at photosbywalt.com. And with that, we are going to get things started. Today is a great day to be brave. You might as well start now. You have the power to change your circumstances any day you decide. Let today be that day. Rise up, be amazing, be you, do you. All right, my friends, I'm super excited to welcome my guest to the show today. We have back Miss Karen Gray, the mindset coach.
Hello.
Super excited to have you here. And you guys probably saw her show about a week ago. We aired it, right?
Last week, yeah.
So we are super excited to have you back on the show again. So welcome, Karen.
Thank you.
And I want to welcome somebody super special. I'm excited to have on the show today. And I know Karen's excited to be here with her as well. And she was introduced to us both through my good friend Casey Haston, of which we love.
Love Casey.
Was on the podcast back in March. Incredible leader and just all around great person. And so my guest here today is Miss Amilya Antonetti.
Thank you for having me.
I'm super excited. So I'm going to tell my listeners a little bit about you before we jump into this. So Amilya is one of the most sought after human behavior experts and strategic advisors. Her proprietary Genius Key system emboldens companies by removing biases like gender, race, religion, and other factors that impact building a healthy, prosperous, and sustainable community within the business and its people. Amilya's national popularity began in the early 1990s after discovering the life-threatening effects of the cleaning products had on her infant son. She successfully founded Soapworks, which quickly became one of the fastest growing, privately owned, all-natural household product companies in North America. She sold the company, now renamed Greenworks, and today it is a wholly owned division of Clorox. In 2019, Amilya was awarded the Woman of the Decade Award from Women's Economic Forum.
Just means I'm old.
I love it.
No, it means you're awesome.
Just means I'm old. I've been around a long time.
This is so great. I had, this mold thing is like a real thing because I had a Shemaine Nugent on my show, I want to say a little over a month ago, and her whole story is wrapped around mold as well. She wrote a book, talked about how I think they were doing the MTV Cribs, and at that time, that's when they discovered the mold in her home, and because she had been sick for a long period of time, couldn't figure out what was going on, and so she has a whole entire story.
Yeah.
Wrapped around that.
More common than people realize. Yeah.
Absolutely. So welcome. We're
Thank
super
you.
excited to have you
I'm
here.
very excited to be here.
And you can probably tell I have a lot of energy. I get excited on this podcast. And so I get super excited when we have powerhouse people just because I'm an energy driver and a feeder. I love it. So I'm so glad to have you here. So I know, Karen, when you have something you want to ask her, just feel free to jump in and talk.
I will. I'm excited to see the dynamics of this. I almost feel like I just get to watch the show and the minds explode. I'm just picturing that because I know you guys are going to drop some amazing nuggets here. So
super excited. All right, Amilya. So what I want to do, I want you to walk us back a little bit and tell us how this all came about for you, because I'm one of those, I feel like we all have this story and we don't ever just wake up and we're just there. We arrive, right? We have this whole transformation process we have to go through. And that's really what this podcast is for me. It's about showing my audience that everyday ordinary people get to live extraordinary lifestyles because they make just a few different decisions in their life. And so that's why I get so excited when I have powerhouse people, because I love stories. So I want you just to kind of walk us back and tell us how this all kind of came about for you.
So it's been an evolution, right? I always tell this was not one big master plan. I started my first company at 17 and sold it at 19. And I have consecutively done over a dozen companies since then. And when I started, right, again, you're too young at the time to even know what you're doing. I didn't think I had the front door entrance. There was nobody sending me to college. That wasn't going to happen. I was a hellion in high school, but I had a very unique ability that was misinterpreted no matter who I came in contact with. I was that kid who was odd, who was different, but I was definitely a problem solver. And that person that you would go to if you had an issue, but wasn't very blendable. And so my first company was a construction company, which I reinvented parts of how construction happened and ended up selling that company. That allowed me to kind of get my feet wet. But at the time there was no such word as an entrepreneur. Right? So what I did was a survival skill and was to try to get me from point A to point B. I had no sense of what I was doing, and I didn't even really see it as an accomplishment other than it gave me a chunk of change to then say, what am I going to do next? And then from there, a series of different steps. So I owned 18 restaurants and sold them. And then I entered into my claim to fame, bringing green mainstream. But again, it was an evolution of what I was learning about people and business. After starting and selling that company, I was asked if I could do it for other people, right? So in this trajectory of running that company, get it started out of my garage. We took it to about 180 million. And they asked me if I could do it for somebody else. And I was like, I have no idea. Nobody's ever asked me the question, so I didn't know. And so I started getting invited to athletes, musicians, and entertainers who were struggling with the back end of their business. So, was asked to come in on a band that was going out on tour in the 80s. And I was like, yeah, that brand name's not going to work, right? So we did a rebrand on that. Then I was asked to come in and sit as a consultant with a gentleman who they were going to make a sportscaster. And I was like, that doesn't sound like a right move either. And so we ended up doing the George Foreman Grill. And then from there, we did stuff with Montel Williams when he got sick. And then we went on to do Mike Tyson. Wow. And then, Oprah After Show and Steve Harvey. Like, I can go on and on and on all of these very well-known figures that struggled to monetize their talent, right? And so same problem with our clients who have a unique ability, who are a CEO or a small business person who hit their ceiling and start to flatline. Mm-hmm. And so it's caused me to take my human behavior training. So I have 71 different licenses in human behavior. So anything you can possibly think about wanting to know about humans, I'm the person to ask.
Wow.
And so for that, I started to study about what makes a person a genius. And then why is the journey between applying the genius to all of the different industries so challenging for people? Because we get tunnel vision, not understanding what makes us genius and how do I monetize that into my lifestyle and making money, right? Mm-hmm. And so that pattern or that conditioning that happens as we start to develop from tween to teen to 20 something, breaking away, the inner child dies, you try to get your feet rooted into who you are in your late 20s, then practicing that skill set in your 30s, right? This trajectory, society-wise, we have created a lot of obstacles that doesn't let this full development happen, right? And since we removed a lot of stuff from this tribe mentality that we derive from, we created all kinds of problems. And so I was like, okay, well, if most people are not going to be an entrepreneur, right? Statistically, most people are going to go work for somebody else or with somebody else. I was like, wouldn't it be great if companies would take the responsibility of truly developing their people, 100%. To developing their people to their absolute highest and best self, to give them the vision, or what I call the mirror, of what your highest and best self looks like. Mm-hmm. And so that is what the tool of the Genius Key has been doing for 35 years as we turned around businesses and grow and scale brands. What we were implementing was the Genius Key, which is helping somebody identify their genius, know where it scales and where it will never scale, and then what it does when you partner it with other energies, other factors, other people for that high scale. And so instead of just keeping it within our crisis management company, I was like, what if we brought it out to everybody? So everybody had the resources to see themselves more clearly, and better yet, see others more clearly, and how what's called the third entity. So you and I together create a third entity. Okay. It's not you, it's not me, it's the us, right? And so now you and I create a third entity. And so now in this room right now, what's really happening is this external force combined. Well, when you look at a success formula, if you knew that what would happen when we added her to the equation to our desired outcome, if that could be predictable for you, you would apply yourself to success more easily, You would pick people
Yeah.
on project more strategically versus default. Right now, all businesses and most people, if they want to get something done, they just ask the person that they have the best relationship with.
Right.
And then they can't figure out why the outcome sucks. And I'm like, because you're doing spray and pray. You're hoping that I'm going to ask you to do something, and A, you're going to get excited about it, and B, it's within your skill set.
Right.
And then I'm going to ask you something else, and you're going to hope again. And this hope and pray has caused a massive amount of dysfunction in our companies, in our communities, in our families, because it doesn't work. It sets us up to fail. Because the reality is you're going to disappoint me because I didn't pair it right to begin with.
Right.
And so that's what we're teaching. We're teaching the fundamentals of human behavior and how we develop and how that vibrates off others with zero judgment, because there's no good or bad or right or wrong. It just is. Right? We vibrate off how we vibrate. It's not positive nor negative. It's just a frequency.
Right.
And so when people start to understand that, they then can start to decode why things happen. And so I spend most of my time really in our sessions explaining to people why they feel the way they feel, why they're struggling with something right in front of them. And I always say when I'm on stage, I basically say, I'll give you $1,000 if you stop me. Because if I have your genius key, I can pretty much answer or help you move on to where you desire to go. But I can point out using the genius key, if this, then that. So when people say, oh, I really want to become a millionaire, and I'm like, great, no problem. I can map exactly what you need to do to get there. But you need to understand that with this is the sacrifice you're going to trade in exchange. So people go, wait a minute, I don't want to trade this for that.
Right.
I'm like, but that's energetically what happens. One reward comes from a sacrifice on something else. You can have everything you desire, not at the same time. Right? That energetic balance is always moving in ebb and flow and ebb and flow and ebb and flow. So you're making decisions, one project or one phase of your life at a time. And you're constantly in development. So what you wanted and what was important and valuable to you when you were 20 to 25, well, why is it that at 30 to 35, you completely forget that? You're like, I never wanted any of this.
Right.
I'm like, yes, you did. That's what you believed then.
Right.
Because it's the evolution of development. We've just put it into the people operating system for all companies. So companies and their people can work together on the same desired lifestyle in a healthier format. Our old systems are unhealthy for people. Completely unhealthy. We have more evidence to show the old way does not work.
Yeah.
And what's the new people operating system? Well, there isn't one.
Right.
So I'm like, let's put out what we've been doing for all these years. And then if it works for people, great. If it doesn't, stick with your old stuff.
Exactly.
No problem.
Yeah. This is so great. And it's so interesting that I'm listening to all this, because we just had a conversation about this today. But this is one of the things that I talk about all the time, even when I'm working with people, because I had this big moment where, and I've talked about this throughout several podcasts in here with different guests. We've had this conversation where I was in a space, I was in network marketing for a very long time, and I ranked up, I moved up into the company very quickly, did very well. But there were things about it, like I would reach that success, and there was always this, I felt as if I was swimming upstream. Like I always felt like I had to work really, really hard. Well, as I was going through this whole personal development journey, and I talk about this one moment that I was on my treadmill in the back room, and I was going through my strength finders, and my friend had kept talking about, you need to go through strength finders. And that's a very basic rundown test, but it is good for a beginner stage. Yeah. And I was sitting in there, and I had this like light bulb moment go off where I recognized, this is what I'm good at. This is why I'm excelling in this area. This is where I'm not, and this is why I'm not excelling. And so it was like this big moment went off. And so I talk about this in the podcast all the time about how, yes, we go through this whole idea that we're supposed to go to college, get a job. We go to work because we think we're going to like this job because we're going to make good money. We'll be an accountant or a doctor or whatever that is. And then we realize that we don't like what we're doing, and we're in an environment where we're not supported, and so we're not excelling. And so everything that you're talking about, the energy, all of that makes sense to me 100%, because when you recognize where your strengths are then you can let go of the things that you're not good at and find the right people to work with you, and you're much more productive. And as you said, the energy is better, people work better, they show up better.
Well, it's the power of we.
Yes,
right? There's a reason why they
right.
say there's no solo in success.
Yeah.
Your genius is born to be paired with other genius that vibrate in that same direction for a greater outcome than you could ever do alone. And so it's about finding the other people that are here, innately here, to create that overarching impact in the world, right? And so how do you find your people? Well, the first thing that you have to do is you've got to close your eyes and your ears, because you've been misprogrammed for so long on all these myths, these false beliefs. Be a doctor, lawyer, and MBA.
Right.
Okay, well, most people who are doctor, lawyer, and MBA, right, hate their life.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
80% of people who have their degree
Right.
don't practice in that degree. So we have so many data sets that show that that is not working, but yet people default to keep doing the same thing over and over again. And we have not learned, right, how to have adult relationships. How do you let go of immature relationships that no longer serve you, right? What is that? How do you make that process happen so that you can free yourself of the baggage that is holding you back? And that's really what, a lot of therapy is about, to say, okay, let me be a mirror for you. You're showing me that this and this and this in your life is no longer serving you. So you can either A, let it go, right? Because you're not responsible to keep carrying something that's not working for you, or change the relationship. And so when we work with couples, that's exactly what we do. We help them change the relationship, because I have this theory of 7. I'm like, so you're going to end this relationship and it's a 7, and you're going to go out there and guess what? You're going to find another 7 because there's no such thing as a 10, right? So you're just going to keep trading 7s.
Yeah.
So why don't you first get a handle on what can you do differently into the outcome in that relationship, right? Let's not worry about them, because 50% of the outcome you control. Right? So if you just work on a better 50%, you've already moved forward. Right? From a business standpoint, what I help CEOs and business owners realize is that they can set the framework of their people operating system that is already 50% of the way there to success. Right now, they're providing 0. It's by spray and pray. So why don't we put the tools in place so that people understand what development is of self, of the team, of the community? Where are those tools?
They're not. They're not.
But we've learned over the evolution of time in business, the business has not grown. The infrastructure and the operating system has not grown where we are. Like nothing has changed, right? So when people make an analogy, oh, the genius key is like some of those, I'm like, okay, all of those things were created in the 70s and the 80s. It was pre the digital revolution. And the way we associate now with technology has changed who we are as people. And so you have to be using an operating system that incorporates where we are today, where we're going tomorrow, what our desires are for today. Our lifestyles look different now. And we keep going back to this old system that doesn't work. I keep saying, 100%. You just described something to me. I'm like, okay, so that's not the relationship, right? So my family doesn't look anything like the Beaver Cleaver family, nor would I want it to. Right? Our days don't look like that. Our lifestyles don't look like that.
So true.
So why are we keep referring to old ways? Right? That just let them go. We've moved on. I say that to, my clients all the time. I'm like, okay, mourn it. It's a loss. I'm sorry. It's over. That chapter's over. It's gone. You did great, but that was yesterday. What are we going to do today? Because people stay stuck. They stay stuck in this energy that it's called a vicious cycle, right? That sucks them down into this land of depression because they're still mourning what was.
What could have been.
If I would, I could, I should.
Well, I think that's where you and I resonate, or yours, I guess your whole thing resonates with me, because I'm a problem solver, and I am very much, I can't sit and hash about things forever. And I talk about this all the time, because even when I'm coaching my clients, they're still going over these same patterns, like you're talking about, these same things. And I'm like, we've talked about this like 5 times. What are we going to do to solve this? Where are we going with this? Because we're on this same pattern. And so I absolutely can get that. There's so much goodness in this. And I think, yes, there is this whole idea that...
So you have to remember, for some people, right, some people's genius, their relationship with action feels like they're trying to survive, right?
Yeah.
Feels like death. So when
Right.
you say, okay, I need you to take action, that would be like me asking you to stand still.
Right.
They panic
Right.
because it is the opposite key of their natural innate state.
Sure.
So you have to spoon feed them in their language on how they're going to take action. It's never going to be how you and I would relate
agreed.
to action.
Right.
And so that's the difficulty by using a one size fits all tool, thinking it's going to work for somebody else. Well, if that was the case, none of us would have any problems.
Right.
Right. And so that's by understanding when you ask somebody, okay, we've discussed this, and now I need you to go into the next step. That's your next step.
Right.
What's their next step so
100%.
that you can support it, right? Because for you, it
Yeah.
doesn't make sense and it doesn't feel good.
Right.
But that doesn't mean you have to pick up that bag. And that is the mindset that we have learned, that if I really care about you, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up your baggage and I'm going to carry it for you.
Right.
That is the biggest disservice that you could ever do for somebody, right? Is you have to be able to say, I acknowledge you're carrying a lot of suitcases, girlfriend. There's a lot going on over there. I'll help you put one down, but I will not carry your baggage for you, right?
Yeah.
You need to go through the process of putting it down, because in that process is the healing and the growth to the next level. That's where the entitlement comes in when we try to do it for our kids, right? When we try to do it for our employees, when we try to do it for our family members, when we try to do it for, you know, those you know, people who find us, who suck the energy right out of us, because they're hoping we do it for them. But it is the biggest energy cut off that the needs you do for you. Because now you'll never vibrate to your highest and best use because you're down here on a frequency that you're not supposed to be in. Right? It's one of those things to say, okay, let me give you tools, but I'm not here to do your work. And those are hard conversations.
100%, 100%, and it is right. You're absolutely. I mean, you can't coach it. There's not a one size fits all for everybody when you are coaching them, and that's the thing. I took your test, and I know Karen did too. And it was funny because Karen mentioned it to me beforehand. She's like, "I think you're going to be this one, and I'm this one. We're going to be like perfect partners." And sure enough, mine came back perfect charmer. So I keep teasing everybody in the studio. I'm like, "I'm the perfect charmer."
But your charisma is part of your personality, right?
Yes.
So that charm is something that you were never taught.
Yeah.
You were charming when you were little. You've used your charm as an asset for careers where charming is seen, heard, recognized, and valued, right? So if I put you in a project where charming couldn't be applied, right, I would be removing you from your habits and your belief. That's how you're used to showing up. Now you would probably, right, because some of your other coding, right, you would find it challenging to be rewarded and recognized for not your charm, right? Because it would now show the other parts of your genius. But because that default is so easy for you and people respond to it and you've been conditioned, then you've always been the charmer.
Yeah.
And so it's a matter of saying, okay, in this, say, Q4, I'm going to work on developing not my charm because you've mastered that, right? I'm going to work on this other skill, which then creates an elevation all the way through your life. But it's hard because people will come to you because you're charming. And you're like, dang it, I was really not, I didn't want to practice that one.
I'm trying to be charming right now.
Exactly, right.
It is, it's a bit sharp because sometimes I'm like, I'm trying to be serious right now. We're like for real here. We're being serious. I'm not charming anybody right now. That's not the plan.
Yeah.
So, but no, I think the test is great. And I took it. It was interesting because, you know, after we've done so many tests and it was kind of like Karen says, you need to take this. It'll fit in the little pieces that like the other pieces that you don't know about. And one of the big things I told her was the whole kinesthetic learning thing because I never really realized why I always just jump into things. I don't like reading manuals. I don't want to, like right now we're trying to put this program together and I told her I'm looking at all the papers and the forums and I'm like, I'm overwhelmed. There's so much stuff there. I just want to dive in and let's put it together.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, because I'm a planner, so I've gathered all this stuff for her.
Yes.
And now I've overwhelmed her.
But no, I was overwhelmed before you gathered. I was overwhelmed when I looked at the website. I saw all the forums on there. I'm like, this is a lot.
But if you knew the project, right? So the one side of the Genius Key is the individual and the other side of it is the work itself. And so if you knew that this project was going to be more auditory, more bullet point, more streamlined, then you are set up for success because you know you're not going to have the ability to just wing it and figure it out, right? But then I'd have to quantify it for you because I'm taking you out of your preferred state and putting you in a project that is going to be wired differently to say, okay, we're going to be the first 15 minutes are going to be bullet points. Then I'm going to give you the freedom, right, to like mess around in there again, right, to use your kinesthetic ability, and then come through, have you take it and then bullet point it again, so that there's a pace that moves well for you, and then a pullback to give you time to organize, and then a pace that works good for you, and then let you pull back and organize. If it's set up for success, then everybody on the team can thrive. But instead, we just give people a project.
Yeah.
They have a meeting. There's no rhyme or reason, and people leave and they have no idea what they accomplished.
Exactly, they have no idea what happened.
Yes, yeah.
We've been pretty good. I think we've been doing pretty good, and she's been good at organizing and doing that like that, so that I can see the little steps and I don't get so much. But we were laughing at it in the beginning because I told her, looking at the website, I was like, Karen, there's like 2,000 pieces of literature on here. My brain has gone on lockdown.
Right, exactly.
I'm like, listen,
overstimulated.
I want to have fun. I want to jump in, dive in, and I want to make this work. Like, my vision is huge. Like, I'm that person that sees the big picture. Like, where are we going with this? But I'm also very much a point A to point Z, and I need the easiest route to get through all that. I don't like all the fluff in the middle, and so it's been interesting. And
but your big vision, big group is not coming from your kinesthetic. It's coming from your the grouping up. That's where that's coming from.
So we're both group 2.
Right. Yeah. So that's where that's coming from. You're just seeing it. You're organizing the vision differently.
Right.
You're bullet pointing it, right? And she's actually feeling the actual experience, right? So you require, like, she can get, believe it or not, even though she appears to be more the alpha, right? She's the one who will get overstimulated. Too much light, too much sound, too much work, too much whatever. To pull back, to reset, so that she can reset her genius, right? So she'll hit tap out before you will, with an amount of something that's chaotic.
100%. I check out.
Yeah.
Today's over. I'm done.
9:30.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, don't call me 9:30 and think, because my brain will just be like,
no.
Right.
So when we did our debrief, it was so instrumental for me. I mean, I talked to you. I started crying because it was just like, those little locks falling into place, like ching, 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 ching.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, my husband, you've got to take this. Jen, you got to take this. I had my teenage son take it.
Oh, perfect. Awesome.
And just, everything that came back is like, my husband, he's very alpha.
Right.
But he's a perfect partner.
Right.
And so he's like, I'm not that. I'm more dominant. I'm this. And he's like, chewed on it for 2 days. Then he came back. He goes, I am so that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was like, I wasn't going to say anything, but I was about to schedule an appointment with Amelia.
Right. Well, what happens is it gives you the permission to accept what you feel.
Yeah.
Instead of accepting what people tell you, and instead of accepting the outcome, right? Because we struggle with, well, that's not what I intended, right? We're like, well, that's not really what I thought was going to happen here. And so it leaves these gaps of emptiness in us, right? And because we can't figure out why something is happening. And so it gives you an opportunity to take a look at how other people are perceiving you and how that is vibrating off of you. I always have to help people when they go through the Genius Key to say, this isn't who you are. This is how people are perceiving you. And that's why they're reacting a certain way. But if you have that ammunition, I can go, oh, wait a minute. You're picking up, right, from I want to get things done and cross off the list. You're picking it up that I actually don't care. I actually really, truly care. I deeply care. I see you, I hear you, and I recognize you. If I can then start speaking from what your thinking is happening to give you what I really is doing, my action-oriented, overdeveloped skill sometimes comes off as arrogant, sometimes comes off as overconfident, sometimes comes off as a know-it-all. And I have to understand that that's people's perception. And I have to be honest to say, wait a minute, I'm probably one of the most insecure people you will ever meet. You think you feel confident. Confidence isn't something that comes to me naturally by any shape or form. Sure. I had to learn that through my vulnerability by saying, I don't know, I'm not sure, I am uncertain, I am nervous, I am insecure. That through that vulnerability is what then resonates confidence. Right. And so it's the opposite of what feels comfortable. Because when you're in your younger self, you're like, well, I'm not going to tell everybody I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I'm going to pretend like I know what I'm doing. So they think I'm confident. I'm like, well, it's actually the opposite that happens. Right. The more you tell people, the more they don't believe you. Right. It's in the authenticity of those communications. And it's difficult when you're a leader. right? You can't go in and go, hey, we have no idea what we're doing. We got no idea, we have no idea what the direction is. We're just kind of winging it. We might pay you, we may not. You can't quite do that as a leader, right? So you have to learn, how do you have these authentic conversations? Same thing in relationships. How do you go, you know what? We've been together for a while now. I'm just not feeling it. I'm not quite feeling what I used to feel. And I think that we have to redefine our relationship so that I can get more of what I'm needing now. I'm a different person than I was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, pre-kids, post-kids.
Sure.
And people go, oh my God, that means the marriage is over. I'm like, I didn't say the marriage is over. I said, we're going to redefine the relationship, because you grow. You have to grow together. And if you're still creating the same habits that you used to have, you're going to feel like roommates.
100%.
That is no fun.
Right.
Right? And so people are like, well, nobody's ever said redefine the relationship. Let's change the parameters. So I'm like, man, you've been in counseling for a long ass time not to be going, let's start talking about what works for me now.
Right.
And be okay with the change.
Yeah.
That's what we have to do with our kids, right? Our kids, they come back. I've got kids in college. They come back and I'm like, yeah, it's not the kid that I sent.
I got a couple of those too. I totally get it. I get
I'm
it.
like, okay, you're an adult, so I'm going to let you figure that out, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I got 3 of them right now that are not the same kids.
Yeah,
I say that every day. I'm like, are these the kids that I gave birth to? Like, did they come out of the same house, the same brew? I don't know.
But I think that's part of when you guys are trying to talk about, starting something. Well, if you're going to start something, you first have to get right with what you're stopping. Right?
Yes.
Before you start new, make sure you're completing all those open-ended things and taking the value forward. So whatever you were doing, what did you learn from it? What is valuable from that last experience, and what are you pulling forward? What are you going to stop doing and not pull forward? So that doesn't matter if that's in a relationship. That doesn't matter if it's money. That doesn't matter if it's happiness. That doesn't matter if it's freedom. You have to get clarity on what is working for you and what is not. And then what's the boundaries and guidelines to say, oh, that doesn't work for me anymore. I'm really happy that we used to do coffee at 3, but right now that doesn't work for me because I'm trying to do this. So can we, instead of have coffee, can we have tea? Or can we go for a walk instead? Or can whatever? Because if you ask with clarity for others, 90% of the time, people will give you what you ask for. But you have to do the work first to understand, what are you asking for?
Yeah. So good. So good. So good. We can sit here for hours and talk about
the behavior. Right, there you go.
Yes, it's so good. It's so good. Okay, so I got to ask you a fun question, because I'm all about the mindset and all of that. It's my favorite stuff to talk about. Okay, because you're a rock star. You have done a lot of stuff, and I think we could talk about this forever. But I want to know, when you are going after something, what does that look like for you? What's that headspace look like for you?
Usually if you look at my history, all the companies that I've done or project that I get involved in, it comes down to healing pain. I'm trying to heal pain in an organization or in an industry or with a person or in somebody's relationship or whatever that outcome, right, is. I'm trying to heal it so that it feels better. And so I'm always attracted to something that looks very complex and very sticky, to simplify that so that the outcome feels better, to loosen that stuff up so that there's movement, and movement by choice with clarity in a better palatable feeling is what I'm always attracted to. So in my headspace, when I'm looking at something, I'm always looking at something going, well, there's probably a better way that could have been said, or there's probably a better way for what everybody wanted on the team or on the project, instead of just one. I read a white paper once that said that in companies and in projects, 10% actually feel satisfaction. Not happy, satisfaction. Wow. And I was like, whoa. I'm like, people are accepting satisfaction. They're accepting complacency. They're accepting okay. And I'm like, what happened over these generations that okay became good enough?
Right.
And I'm like, we are designed as humans, this is where we're not technology. As humans, we're designed to thrive, right? We 100%. Look and seek, right, those relationships and those things because we want to thrive, right? You can call it competitive, you can call it lots of different things, but there's a sense of ownership and accomplishment when you work on something and you're like, I did it and I accomplished it. And I think that that's one of the worst thing that you could rob somebody of, is rob them from their opportunity and their accomplishments. Sure. But when you look at those scenarios, we've conditioned ourselves to just be mediocre.
Mm-hmm.
And we've stopped communicating. We've stopped asking. We've stopped engaging because we're so afraid of this political correctness that started, whatever it was, 20 years ago, that have alienated us from our neighbors, right? Because we're so afraid that we're going to offend you. I would rather just say nothing and not engage with you. So we don't even acknowledge people. Like, we don't even, I'm like, it's amazing, right? And so I've created all these genius exercises to demonstrate to people the power of people, right? So we were I walked up, I had a group of people that basically were like, no, behavior doesn't matter, da-da-da-da. And I'm like, would you like me to demonstrate how wrong you are right here? And they're like, fine. I'm like, so we walked up to a revolving door, right? And so it was outside. We were going into a office building, and so there was like 8 of us on this side. And I waited for a gentleman to kind of, who's obviously in a hurry, so he's like an alpha-looking male, walking up this door. And I just walked up and I paused, and I let him kind of help me move into the door. Not hold the door for me, but kind of allow me to go first. And all I did was I put my energy just a little bit before him. So either could plow me over, right? Or I could push my way in front of him, or I could retreat, right? So I had 3 different options. And so all I did was energetically, as I put myself there, he paused and kind of motioned me in, which most people will do if you give them the opportunity. They will, if you pause in front of a door, they will open a door. If you pause in front of, they will pull back. It's a very subconscious reaction to serve, right? Because we're wired to serve. And when he did that to me, I turned around and I said, thank you so much for allowing me to feel like a woman. And I proceeded. He was like a deer in headlights. He wasn't sure what just happened. And so now my tribe of people came in, and now we're sitting over to the left at a table. He charged on his way. Well, magically he appeared like 30 minutes later. He came over, he goes, excuse me. He goes, I don't know you. He goes, I can't tell you how I feel right now. He says, I feel so empowered. I feel like a superhero. And I was like, what do you mean? He goes like, nobody's ever said I help them feel like a woman. He's like, that's all I ever want to do. He goes, I never know with women like you, do I open a door? Do I not open the door? He goes, what you've said to me, I can't shake what you said to me, because it had that kind of an impact on him. And I turned to my group and I go, see, human behavior absolutely doesn't matter at all. And they were like, oh my God, how did you do that? I said, all I did was I vocalized how I felt. All I did was I said it out loud. Thank you. Right now, can I open my own door? I'm perfectly capable of opening my door. Am I a beta because he opened the door? Absolutely not. I'm still the same Amelia I was before. But I allowed him to serve. And what I was trying to demonstrate is that when you serve others, right, that's the giving, right? And then you allow people to serve you, that's the receiving. Those 2 vibrations create the infinity loop. And you can amplify the infinity loop, or you can absolutely destroy it. And people go, well, I don't know what you mean by that. I'm like, well, if you're a giver and you love to give, that means you have a difficulty receiving. So if I'm trying to give to you and you deny my giving, you've stopped the infinity loop. It can no longer flow between us. So you've cut off our relationship. The relationship now flatlines right there. Because if I'm trying to give and you won't receive, then what is it telling me? You can't trust me. You don't believe in me, right? We're no longer connected. The relationship is stopped. That's as far it will ever go, right? And so it is about equally giving and then receiving. Giving to the universe, and then let the universe give back. And then give back to the universe by serving.
I know, it's so good.
And so we have like 1,008 of these genius games that we try to teach people so they can teach it in their family. They can teach it to their kids. They can do this in their personal relationship. They do it in their companies. You do it with your colleagues, because people then they go, oh my gosh, like I feel something. I'm like, that tingly feeling is you feel served. But we've taken it away. So, I mean, same thing too when I go, I'm a big coffee buff. Like coffee used to be my boyfriend. I was like, oh, I love the way he smells. I love everything about him. I love coffee. I love the entire experience. It's my moment of me, awesome. Right? So I love it. It's one of my treats that I give myself to kind of transition from my achieving day, and then I transition into my reflecting day. So from right around 3 o'clock, I'm reflecting and no longer achieving.
Gotcha.
I'm on the downward slide, and it's my coffee. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, yes, this is going to be the transition right here. I can smell it. Oh, yes.
And I'm visualizing it right now.
I'm like, okay. And so
I'm planning how to get
Right,
you
She's
coffee.
learning how to get the coffee as I'm picturing this
is
right now.
It's a big moment for me. So I'm in line. I'm all excited. I'm like, okay. It's like, it's like, black coffee with almond milk or coconut milk. Like it's not that big of a deal.
So great.
But so I think I'm like, Jim, thank you so much. You're right, part of my transition. You are going to serve me my moment. He's like, I am? I am? How'd you know my name? I'm like, it's on your name tag. And so they realize that they're part of this very special moment for me. And they're like, is this your first cup of coffee? I'm like, no, just my first 3 o'clock coffee for today.
So great.
And so I welcome people in to things that are exciting for me. And they get excited. They're not even sure why they're excited. And so I'm at the end, I'm like, thanks, Jim. Here it comes. I'm ready. They're like, bye. They're like, who is that girl? Right? But it changes and it's 10 minutes of my day, maybe. But it's not just me, it's of service of everybody, because there's something that they're contributing to that's giving me a sense of joy.
Yeah.
And we have those opportunities all day long. And we don't do anything about it. Right? Even like the little person was over here. I was like, oh wait, excuse me, I have to get off over there. Like, and they're like, oh, go ahead. I'm like, thank you. I'm sorry, I'm an idiot. I just whoop over there. And they're like, but they're like, okay, but I'm acknowledging I'm absolutely in the wrong lane. I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. And thank you so much for being tolerant of my craziness. And they're like,
So
all right,
great.
but they remember it.
Yes,
right.
absolutely.
And so if we had more of those, life would feel better.
100%.
Life would feel better. And it's just because we live in this vessel of, I'm not going to see you. I'm not going to acknowledge you. I don't want any of your stuff to fall over here, so I'm just going to pretend. And I'm like, we're living these sheltered, limited lives. Yeah. And then we wonder, well, it's not about starting something new. Why don't you just engage with what you're living with right now?
Right.
You can start this very second. Start living your life.
Yeah.
Start setting the expectation that you're not going to give your genius to somebody else unless that person matches your lifestyle. You should demand that of the company. What are you going to do to develop me? I'm going to enhance your job, obviously. What are you going to be doing for me?
That is so great. Oh my goodness. Can you imagine if everybody was like, that's so great. 100%. I love it. Yeah. We're like sitting, Karen and I are just like sponges right now. We're like soaking it up.
I know.
Right now.
Every time.
I get a fun just like picking her brain about all this stuff, because no, it is so true, and all this stuff, like, it just makes me laugh, because even with what's going on right now in the world, the climate, like, so much stuff could be taken down a notch just by being human. You know what I mean? Just by all those things you were just talking about, being kind or giving somebody something, smiling, just engaging. It's so funny when you think about all the stuff going on, and you're seeing all this stuff over the internet, and then you're passing people in the store and you're thinking, are these the same people that are popping up on the internet that are talking like this because they're hiding behind the keyboard and they're typing? Because everything to me can be fixed by humans just being humans, being nice to each other.
And that's what we say. That I said, I'll give you $1,000 if I can't fix the problem. And it's usually a simple tool, like, either putting the tool in the home, or putting the tool in the family, or putting the tool on your calendar, or putting the tool for your commitment with yourself. Like, we have so many tools. I keep saying, just tell me what you think the obstacle is, and I'll give you a solution. Tool. Right? Because even if the solution isn't 100% perfect, you are already 50% on the way there, because as you start to move into something new, life reveals something else, and then you can pivot and you can tweak. Yes. But you've got to start the newness in order to be able to gauge what is or is not working. I always call it start, stop, or swap. Yeah. That should be part of your process when you, whatever, like for me, I have a gratitude morning, and then I have a kind of like a review before I journal at night. Mm-hmm. And I go, okay, what am I going to keep from today that was so awesome? Yeah. And then what am I probably not going to do again? Right? And then what am I going to trade? So it almost worked, but not exactly. And then I implement that the next day. So when I have either was too short with somebody, or they were trying to call me and I'm like, hey, I'll call you later. I'm like, oh, I forgot to call them back. Then I don't let that energy just sit and hope that it fixes itself. Then next morning, I'm like, hey, listen, I know you rang me yesterday. I said I was going to call you back. I'm so sorry I didn't get to you. But I acknowledge and don't let that just linger. Or if I was like, you know what? You were trying to talk to me in the hall and I just like kind of blew by you. That probably didn't feel good for you. I'm so sorry. And you're probably going to go like, "Phew,"
Yeah.
but it's seen, it's heard, it's recognized. The letting energy resolve itself leads to a very empty hole within you as an individual. Whether you're on either side, whether you're the doer or the receiver. And when that accumulates over time, then it literally just explodes. And that's what's happening. People are at their wits' end. And it's not because it happened just now with COVID.
Sure.
It's been building for a long time. Like, people go, oh my gosh, the divorce rate is up and this is up and that is that. I'm like, that's been pent up forever.
Yeah.
Now you just locked us all in the house together and we can't go in to do anything. And so now it's becoming more obvious. But I'm like, let's list.
Now we're having to face it.
Let's list the problems. No problem. Let's take them one at a time. One at a time. Let's solve them. It's not a mountain of things. Let's just take one thing and just solve it. And that's what we do. We change the morning greeting, or we change your afternoon, or we find your 3:00 wow moment, right? Those little games that you play with yourself is life. It's the journey. It's not, I would tell you, out of all the things that I've accomplished in life, it's never been at the peak where I found happiness. Right? It's because I will then take that happiness and re-engineer it to start again.
To start
right?
again, yes.
Because it's in the process of the people that are helping you build. It's the people that become part of your routine. Well, they should all be hand selected. 100%. It should not be by default. Right? And so that is what you learn as you move through these phases, is that you are 100% in control more than you believe. And so you become a sounding board, just like you are, right? When somebody says, I'm stuck, I can't, I won't, I cannot make any changes. And I'm like, okay, let's change that word can't. And let me show you what options you do have. They just can't see them. They just need to see the options. You can do this, and you can do this, and you can do this, and you can do that. You may choose not to, but first let's look at all the options that are actually on the table. And when you can open something up like that, that is where hope is found, because you have options.
Absolutely. Love it. All right. So one final question before I get in my rapid fire. This is easy. What do you love most about what you get to do? What's the best part of all this for you?
Oh, I love to watch somebody's eyes when the light bulb goes off. Like, they have that twinkle that happens, like they go, I get it. Like, I can do this. And I'm like, yes, you can do this. That is my most favorite thing, when people get it.
We just had this conversation, I think, today. That's mine too.
Yeah.
When people have, and it's so funny when you're talking to people and you can say something to them. You can go over something and go over something. And I always feel like, the teacher shows up when the student's ready to receive, when they're open.
Well, if
to
your
it.
husband came back 2 days later and was like, okay, I got what you were saying.
Yes.
That moment, those are priceless.
Absolutely.
Because they connected.
Right.
They both felt seen, heard, and recognized, because he was like, oh, I got it now. Right. And so that was a magical moment between the two of them, and it's priceless. It's priceless.
Absolutely. And it is when you have those moments and then they realize something. And I've had several, I've had many of those in my journey, going through things where something's gone off, and I'm like, I've heard this 100 times, and all of a sudden it rings, and I'm like, oh, it makes sense.
And so you can now get proactive and set the stage to make them happen. Right. And that's what I think the Genius Key is about. So you're helping them happen and happen more often, and attaching them to the reward that has meaning to you. And then you wake up in your desired lifestyle, because they're all about those little moments. That's what makes up the life.
So great, Amelia. I love it. So good information. I love it. Thank you for sharing all this. Guys, we have to tell the listeners, they've got to check out the test. We're going to tell them where to go to find this, because they definitely need to do this test.
Yeah, and it's not just for adults. It's not just for those that are couples. I mean, like I said, I did it. I had my son, he's 14, take it, because he's struggling. And we're struggling with communicating with him and motivating him is the main thing. And once he took the test and I showed my husband, I'm like,
made sense. Huh?
This is why.
Right.
And he looked at it and he read it. He goes, oh, that's Caden. That is so Caden.
It is good.
And it's understanding, right? It's through understanding is where connection is found. You first have to understand somebody before you can start connecting with them.
Yeah. But when we saw, how he reacts and how he's rewarded and the things, all we had to do was change our language.
Yes, it's that simple.
Isn't that great?
And I mean, we got immediate reaction from him. He was kind of suspicious at first.
It's almost like, don't you wish you knew that a long time ago? When you have them, it's so great. It's like, gosh, if you only knew that you had these tools, you were equipped with them in the beginning, you know, but I think again, you get the information when you're ready to receive, and that's why it's important, because when you receive it at that moment, that's when you're going to make the change. If you weren't open to it before, it wouldn't have mattered.
And we're excited now because now we're bringing on lots of more trainers, right? So other people are going to be training, because it's not about me, right? It's about the work. And so the more people we have that can teach and train it to heal pain in their communities.
Well, I'm excited just listening to you. Like, I want to learn it all now. It's so great. So much of it is what we're, so much of it, you know, having been in the industry that I am, because we studied like DISC, and I'm not going to say these are even remotely alike, because it is very different, but even stuff like just learning that, like, you know, I worked with women for so long that like in the first 3 minutes of somebody talking to me, I could tell how they were motivated. Like I knew exactly what questions to ask and where to put my focus. And I'd always joke and say, you know, I always knew when I had my SC personalities in the room, because I knew I was going to have a lot of facts. I was going to have to take it down a notch and provide facts. So everything that you've got, I think, is incredible. I love what you're doing, and Casey 100%. Didn't lie when she was talking to us about it. But I do want to ask you some fun rapid fire, because these are so fun, and I think you're going to have fun with these.
Okay. I'm kind of... I'm just going to sit back.
These are fun. Okay, so morning or night person? Morning. I should have known that. I'm a morning person too. I was going to know my lion people who like to get up, take charge. Like, I'm task oriented in the morning. Yeah. Because the reason I knew this is because when you said the 3 o'clock coffee and you go down, this is me. I have tea at 3 o'clock, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
I love mornings. I love watching the day wake up. Yes, love everything about the morning.
Yeah. And so we have this, you know, as we're working on this program, it's so funny because like she'll send me stuff in the middle of the night, and then I'll get up at 5 in the morning and I read it, and I'm
beautiful.
Like, and I'm ready to roll. And then I'm messaging her, and I'm like, I'm on my zone. Like, my to-do list is rolling.
At 8 o'clock, I read it.
Yeah, she reads it later, so we just have it worked out. It's all good. All right, and cat or dog person?
Dog.
Dog. Do you have a dog?
Yeah, we have 2 dogs.
You have 2 dogs. Okay, what kind of dogs do you have?
So I have a brand new one, puppy, which is an Aussie Doodle, which is an Australian Shepherd and a Doodle. Yes. And then I have a boxer.
Cool.
And a horse, so I don't know if those
are count. They like, so did you get them during COVID? They're like COVID puppies, or
no, the boxer's been around for a while, but the puppy was definitely a COVID thing.
I got a COVID puppy too. That's why I'm asking. I got a COVID little brindle pit bull.
Yeah, it's better than bringing home another horse, though. So there you go. Yes.
That might be true. Yes. So we have dogs. We have all of them. We have every pet you can imagine.
Yeah, but I'm definitely a horse person followed by a dog. Yes.
Horse person.
What kind of horse?
So it's a barrel racing horse, right? So
they're
grays. I don't do, not anymore. I mean, I'm just not. But I love horses. I love everything about horses. So I think there's such a beauty between power and strength. I mean, they're incredible animals. So I'm a big horse person. Yeah.
That's so awesome. Love it. That's awesome. And what would you say is your favorite food?
Oh, favorite food. I like anything I can play with. Right, so I like artichokes because they're finger foods. So I like anything that I can do with my hands, tear apart, pull it, like anything that does not require silverware. Because you can't eat with your hands and not have a great time.
This is so good. This is a totally unique answer today.
Right, you can't. I mean, it's like anything. So like anything that my hands are in it.
So like chips and dips?
Chips and dips.
Like sushi, pistachios. I'm like sitting here
anything that I can play with my food. I'm game.
She's good. She's got it.
Yeah.
So if I took you to the fondue place,
I would love that.
Love it.
Yeah, it's a total game. Yeah, I like anything that's interactive and I can play. The more like prim and proper it is, the less I'm interested in going. Right? Yeah, finger food. Like I love kids party. I'm like, cool. Are we gonna have those little sandwiches? Like there's gonna be dips in there. Yeah, like anything that I can literally play with my food. Yeah,
that is so great. Okay, Amelia, if you were stuck on a deserted island and you can eat, there's food there. You don't have to worry about like your regular stuff. What would be the one thing you'd have to have?
If I was on an island, one thing that I would have to have.
This one's hard.
I mean, and I had food and everything. I would probably my journal.
That's good.
You know, I think through my hands, and so I'm journaling and I'm capturing. So if I was on an island, I would probably immediately start a storytelling. You know, trying to capture what I was learning about the island, and I knew that the content would be something somewhere. So I think my journal.
Yeah. So when you were on Casey Haston's podcast, did she do the Mars thing with you? Like you had to pick the 3 things you would take if you went to Mars?
Well, yes, but I would never go to Mars.
Okay, but that is good. So you know what I said?
No.
I said, okay, so I didn't think I talked about this on the last podcast. I said a treadmill, paper and a pen, paper like a journal, and pictures. of my family.
Awesome.
But I had to have the journal because I'm the same way. I have to write things down. Like I do a to-do list every day.
Why the treadmill?
Because I exercise every day. I need to have something.
So you can't walk in Mars?
I could. I guess I could, but I wasn't thinking about this. She said 3 things. So
Yeah.
I
And I just, for me, I'm old. Somebody younger and more excited about that. And I can't populate anymore, so like somebody else needs to go to Mars, and so I was like,
I'm not going to Mars.
Right? Yeah, I mean, I would like 2 really cool young people who would want to have like a bunch of babies.
I love that though. You're like so honest about. I'm not going to go to Mars.
Yeah, I don't want any more kids. I'm older than dirt at this point. Like, why would you send an old person to Mars? Send young people to Mars. Let them go do their thing.
I was just wondering what you said. That's why I asked that because she told me that, and I'm like, I had to think about that. I'm like, I can't take people with me. I couldn't even take my whole family if I had to,
Yeah.
That's not enough. I got 3 things. What do I got to pick?
Yeah.
So, but the common thread was the journal because I'm the same way. I have to have stuff to write down.
I love writing. I think it's a great exercise. I'm sorry that more people don't do it, but when you get your thoughts out, that process of getting them out of your head and onto paper. I mean, when I work with people who are suffering from depression, our big foundation is the War on Suicide. If they can get their thoughts out and look at them on paper, and then I literally say them into a mirror. Would you say that to another person? They wouldn't.
Right.
And I'm like, why would you think them for yourself? If you wouldn't say it to your best friend, you realize it's got to be an outlet to get it out of your head and out, so you can then squish it up, burn it, throw away, to get that negative vibration out that's being stuck within them, to keep.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Well, and I like to write too, just because I like to put my thoughts down, but also I'm a big to-do list. I'm very task oriented. And so for me, it's really about, when I'm talking to my people, even it's just about building that confidence, showing that I am actually getting things done, because so often, especially as women, this, we all wear many hats and we'll go through our day and we never even think we've gotten anything done.
So you want my little
yes,
test,
go for it.
My little exercise I give for people who like to do lists?
Go for it.
So right next to all those things, put why.
Why? Why I do them?
Why? If it's on your list, why?
Oh.
Right? Because then it starts associating a task with your return on investment. So if something is on your calendar, you should know what the ROI is. So in my calendar entry, I have an ROI on every single thing that touches my time. So if it's on my calendar, I know exactly why I'm doing it.
That's good. We need to put that in our coaching. When we're talking about the to-do list, now we have more to add.
There's another
we have another thing. We need to talk to her some more, get some more tidbits while we're putting that together, because we were talking about that. Like the to-do list is like my most important thing. Like aside from reading daily, doing my gratitude, but that is all in there. And a lot of it in the beginning when I did it was just so that I would get in the habit of doing these things, because I know for me personally that it gets written down, it happens.
Right. So that was a tool you used then. Now you've gotten to another stage. So when I take over my clients, like whether it's a celebrity or a CEO, the first thing I do is I take all their calendar entries and all their to-do lists, and I show them where they're not being their highest and best self, right? To where those actions actually don't meet the level that they're going towards, right? Because you have to start acting as if where you're going.
Right.
And so a lot of times those to-dos are what's holding you here. Yeah. Right. So when you start to ask why, then you'd be like, wait a minute, why am I picking them up from school? Wait,
exactly.
Why am I? Hang on.
Yeah.
So just literally just go through and
it's about prioritizing. And then that is one of the things I do talk about. I don't put it that way. That is good, though. I like that, because I do have my people prioritize. Like what can be delegated? What can be taken out of that list? What needs to be done right now?
But they don't know how to delegate if they don't know why they're doing it.
No, that's good. That's what I'm saying. That's
good.
They
don't know why they're doing it. Because a lot of times people are doing busy work.
Right.
And I'm like, actually, we don't need to do that at all. I'm like,
that's good. Thanks for sharing that tip. We got that. Hang on to that thought,
but I never thought of it in the perspective of an ROI.
Yeah. But that's what it is. Time is money.
Absolutely.
And so if it's made its way onto my calendar, my team better understand why I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Or why would you ask me to be doing that? They should understand the why, and then more importantly, I need to understand the why. So
good. I love it. Okay, my last question. We'll get on to another rabbit hole here. Okay, so if you could be any character or superhero for a day, what would you pick?
I could be anybody or superhero for a day. I mean, I guess I would like to be Oz.
That's good.
I think at Oz, because Oz was really just a human, but he was somebody who just really wanted to make everybody feel safe and secure, that there was an all-powerful, all-knowing, somebody who cared and was overseeing everything. So I think it would be Oz just for people to realize that I absolutely do care. I care about everybody.
Yeah.
And if I can make people's life just a little bit better, even if it's not like real, you know, it's just a tool. It's really just them. You know, like with Dorothy, it was her all the time. If I can help be that reflection, I think I'd just be Oz.
I love that. I love everything you're doing. I love your message. I love it all. And I think Karen and I both can speak and say the same thing, because I feel like this is what we do too. Everything that we're trying to do, right? And I know when I say this for myself even, is that all the things that I work on is really about helping people be better. And I believe that we're all connected in some way, and that when people work on themselves and become whole, you know, a lot of times we think that what we do doesn't really resonate with anybody else or doesn't have an impact, but every decision, everything that we do, yes, it connects to everybody. And I've said this over and over, that when people are coming to the table fully committed to being a better human being, working on themselves, they have the power to influence so many people. So even like with what's going on in the world right now, I'm sure you're looking at this like I am and thinking, this could all be fixed.
Yeah,
People
absolutely.
just,
Yeah.
I mean, this is what drives me crazy every day, because I look at it and I just think I sit back and I look from the back side of it and I look at the whole picture and think, we're arguing about this and we're arguing about this and we're arguing about this and this all could be fixed.
Yes,
if people
because
could become humans.
They're arguing about
Yes.
topics, and we're not really talking about what's going on underneath.
Exactly.
Right, and those
100%.
conversations will lead nowhere.
Right.
Lead absolutely
Right.
nowhere.
I agree.
And there's so many tools that empower people back into their own right, you know? And so I just try to teach the tools so that...
Well, I love what you're doing.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank
I
you.
love it. I
Thank
like your
you.
test, and I think it is amazing thing. And I'm going to, say to my audience, I want you to share with us a little bit where they can find you, where they can find this Genius Key so they can take this test, because it is not expensive to take and definitely worth it. I think it'll open doors for people, especially people that are looking to want to be better at whatever it is, whether it's their career or their relationships. I think all that stuff is interwoven anyways. And when you fix the area, you fix it all.
Yeah.
So where do our listeners find you?
So Amilya.com is easy. The Genius Key is easy. So just look at geniuskey.com, Amilya.com. We're easily found on all the social channels. I answer. If you ask, I'll answer.
I love
So I'm here to serve. I'm absolutely here to serve.
I love
And
your
if they-
authenticity.
If they take the Genius Key, they can get a debrief, a breakdown from one of your team.
Yep.
So they can learn more about it. It's gosh,
it's
so
really
good.
easy.
Yeah.
So we do one-on-one sessions after the Genius Key. So we'll help you go through the report or help specifically give you tools to work on whatever your desired outcome is. We do healing sessions between couples or between family members and children. We work with a lot of kids to try to kind of decode what's going on for them as they're making life decisions about college. But it's 45 minutes can change the way you see everything.
I need to get all my kids to take it. I love it. I'm like, I need to get all of them to take it. We'll figure them out. No,
It is
I
so
love
helpful.
this. Yeah.
I wish that I would have known who I am, the things that the key revealed to me so long ago.
Yeah.
It would have changed the decisions I made.
Yeah, I think that's with everybody, right?
Absolutely.
I think that's with everybody. When I always say, when you can't unknow. And that's the beauty of it is knowledge, is that wisdom that happens over time.
Yeah.
What the difference is, if you would have known then versus knowing now, is then you probably wouldn't have acted upon it. Right?
Exactly.
You would try to self-medicate or deny or whatever. Now you're in a position where you can receive it and now put it to use.
Yeah.
So that's the difference.
So good. Go
100%.
take it. Go take it.
100%. 100%. All right, this has been great. Thank you for
Thank
being
you.
on here.
Thank you.
Thank you for
My
we
pleasure.
appreciate
My
you,
pleasure.
And we hope you guys love this. I do want to say to our audience, of course, if you love our podcast, please be sure you give us a rating on iTunes. And remember, we are on iHeart and Amazon. And hit that subscribe button on YouTube. And with that, I'm going to leave you guys with a final thought. This is so good. Grit is that extra something that separates the most successful people from the rest. It's the passion, perseverance, and stamina that we must channel in order to stick with our dreams until they become a reality. And that is by Travis Bradbury. All right, you guys take care, be safe, and be kind to one another. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.